Agile Symbiosis. When AI dissolves your job, design a better one. Written by Michael Jansen. Narrated by yours truly, Andrew. And AI by 11 Labs. Copyright 2025, Michael Jansen. All rights reserved. Preface. Like many transformative journeys, this one began with a lasting memory. On a Monday morning, I was a vice president with a 26-year career at a major financial institution. By Tuesday afternoon, my role had been eliminated. One brief conversation, a packet of paperwork, and it was done. In this context, it would be logical to assume that artificial intelligence took my job. It didn't. The reality was less dramatic, more familiar, and far more relevant to what is happening across knowledge work right now. The issue was not performance, but visibility. Exploratory work resists easy measurement. It is illegible to standard metrics, and therefore difficult to value. I was fortunate to have had a long career working in the pockets of innovation within the giant. I remain proud of the value I helped build. Before my time in corporate halls, I spent a decade as a potter. It is a craft that nurtures a polymath mindset, understanding not just clay, but glaze chemistry, the science of firing kilns, geology for sourcing raw materials, and engineering at multiple levels. This process builds a maker's compulsion to understand the whole system. When I later entered technology, that instinct led me to learn every part of the end-to-end web development process, just as I had with clay. In 1996, I hand-coded my first full-stack app, a content management system for small business websites. It was only when I took a job leading design for a commercial online banking portal that I discovered there were separate professions like research, design, engineering, product, and quality assurance. I assumed everyone was a generalist. I approached code and design as a single craft, designing directly in the browser rather than in static mock-ups. I carried that mindset through each job at the bank, filling whatever gap needed filling while collaborating with team members in specialized roles. This maker's instinct, to understand systems holistically and synthesize across disciplines, became the lens through which I approached the puzzle of AI. Getting laid off wasn't just an ending. It was the catalyst. It gave me time to reflect, time to dive deeper into AI technology, a return to the energy I felt learning to code in the late 90s. But this time, building AI-first apps, consulting with startup founders, and using AI to execute projects that previously required a full team. As I worked through the disorientation, the puzzle pieces started to assemble. A simple mental model emerged that explains what is really happening to knowledge workers and what AI is accelerating. My journey, from Potter to VP, was non-linear. This winding path afforded me a perspective that helps clarify the transformation we are all facing. But that capability is not equally available. Many are facing this same dissolution without the same foundation of support, trapped in roles with far less autonomy. This reality is why the argument in this book cannot and does not stop with individual action. My path is my own. The problem is one we all share. Introduction. The debate over AI's impact on jobs has become impossible to follow. Apocalyptic warnings of mass unemployment collide with bland assurances that AI is just another productivity tool. The loudest voices dominate. I am stepping past this debate because both camps focus on future predictions, while the fundamental nature of work itself dissolves beneath them. The illegibility I faced was not a corporate anomaly. It was the first hint that the structural connections holding jobs together had begun to break, dissolving the stable structures that make measurement possible. Artificial intelligence is a universal solvent for knowledge work. It is systematically breaking down the stable container of tasks, skills, and responsibilities that has defined knowledge work for decades. But dissolution is not destruction. In chemistry, a solvent breaks down a compound into its elemental parts, leaving the essence intact. That is exactly what is happening here. The rigid structure of the job is dissolving, but your value, the essential human judgment, creativity, and intent, remains. What was once a predictable compound, a discrete bundle of activities with clear boundaries, is becoming a solution of AI-ready tasks and human responsibilities. As AI increases access to information, the economic value of holding knowledge in your head decreases. When information becomes abundant and instant, the traditional definition of the knowledge worker becomes insufficient. Your value is no longer defined only by what you know, but by how you orchestrate, how you synthesize machine intelligence with human intent to solve novel problems. This evolution links to Drucker's knowledge worker lineage, but creates a distinct mode of working. This differs from the technical orchestration used in software architecture, where the system executes a script. Here, you provide the judgment that defines the goal. But the conversation skips over a key truth. Humans do things AI cannot. As AI advances, it will do more and more of those things humans do well, so the list may shrink over time, but likely won't disappear. Take a junior financial analyst. For decades, this role comprised discrete tasks: extracting data from financial statements, cleaning data, building models, interpreting projections, and formulating recommendations. Each task required specific skills and contributed to a professional identity. AI now performs the first three: data extraction, cleaning, model building, with precision that once took hours but now takes seconds. What remains? Interpretation and strategic recommendations. The analyst's professional identity, built on mastery of these tasks, faces a crisis. Skills that once defined competence become baseline requirements or irrelevant. Yet, our human experience still forms the essential foundation. The challenge, and the opportunity, lies in recombining those elements into new, more valuable forms. The collision. Two powerful opposing forces drive this dissolution. They form every professional's experience right now. The first is the automation headwind, the century-old logic that now views AI as the next step in replacing human labor with more efficient, controllable systems. It is the path of least resistance for organizations built on proven principles of measurement and control. This force pushes toward cost reduction, standardization, and automation. The second is the Augmentation Tide, the humanistic vision of AI as cognitive amplification, enhancing rather than replacing human capability. It promises hyper-productivity, innovation acceleration, and new forms of value creation through human-AI partnership. This force pulls toward capability building, experimentation, and the unfamiliar terrain of symbiosis. These forces collide within organizations, within roles, and within individuals. The collision creates the professional disorientation so many are experiencing, not because you're failing to adapt, but because you're caught between fundamentally incompatible forces defining the future of work. 3 levels of agency. The technology itself does not set our future. It is set by the dynamic interplay of 3 human forces: individual agency, collective agency, and organizational agency. A viable future requires action on all 3. Individual agency is the how-to for the professional who has room to maneuver. It draws a sharp distinction between the passenger, who passively waits for their role to be automated, and the navigator, who actively orchestrates their own value. If an orchestration worker is who you become by circumstance, the navigator is who you choose to become through intention. This requires a repeatable method, the D.I.S.T framework, a repeatable protocol for deconstructing your role and redesigning it around your unique human value. Collective agency is needed when individual skill ultimately hits a ceiling, when it isn't backed by the power to demand the terms of symbiosis. You cannot navigate a storm you do not understand. Navigation requires mapping the collision between the economic pressure to replace human labor and the rising potential of human-centric technology. Organizational agency provides the blueprint for leaders. It defines the wager on human capability as the only path to durable competitive advantage. This requires building an organization capable of measuring value that spreadsheets miss and supporting adaptable professionals. These labels are not an exercise in branding. They are a necessity of navigation. We are currently operating under invisible economic pressures. Unless we name them, they remain vague unease, felt but not seen. Naming them renders them legible. And once a force is legible, you can choose how to interact with it. A note on lineage. I share these frameworks not as abstract theory, but as tools forged in the reality of navigating disruptive change. They draw on intellectual traditions with deep roots. The vision of human-machine symbiosis traces to J.C.R. Licklider in 1960. The practice of job crafting belongs to Amy Rzesniewski and Jane Dutton. The discipline of agile iteration comes from decades of software practice. I did not invent these concepts, and I cite them honestly. What I contribute is integration. I synthesize frameworks from computer science, organizational psychology, and labor economics into a practical system that operates across 3 levels: individual practice, organizational design, and collective power. The value here is not in the novelty of the components, but in their operationalization, the step-by-step methods that take theory and make it usable on Monday morning. If you want groundbreaking theory, read the scholars I cite. If you want a practical playbook grounded in rigorous research, this book is built for you. The test is not whether the ideas are unprecedented. The test is whether they work. You do not wait for the system to change to begin. You start with your own craft. The choice isn't whether AI will transform your work. The choice is whether you will be the passenger or the navigator in that transformation. That defines the problem. The structure of work is dissolving. But dissolution is not destruction. It is the release of potential. The question now shifts from what is happening to what can be done about it. In the next video, we cover Chapter 1, the navigator mindset. That is where the focus shifts from being a passive user of tools to an active navigator of value. Click through to continue the series.